Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
The most expensive misunderstanding in technology today can be captured in a single word: chips. Ask almost anyone what India needs in order to become a serious power in artificial intelligence. And that is the word that comes back: buy the chips and wins the race. It is a clean and confident answer. It is also only the tip of a very large iceberg. And today we are going to go under the water and see the rest of it. Welcome to All Things Policy, the daily podcast from Takshila Institution. This is the show where we try to think about public problems from the ground up, follow the evidence carefully, and avoid shouting while we do it. I am Gopal Tomar, a geospatial research analyst here at Takshila, and this is an episode I have genuinely been looking forward to. Our subject today is India's sovereign AI stack. I have chosen this word stack very deliberately. The whole idea today is that artificial intelligence is not a single thing you can buy. It is a stack, which means it is many layers built one on the top of another. The chips that everyone talks about are only one of those layers, and perhaps not even the one that matters most for India. Why you should care about this? Because a great deal of money and national ambition is being pointed at this subject right now. There is the India AI mission, the semiconductor mission, India's own homegrown AI models, and a large summit in Delhi that brought in the heads of nearly every major AI company in the world. If we get the basis diagnosis wrong, if we decide the problem is chips when it is really something else, then we will spend an enormous amount of money solving the wrong problem. To help me get that diagnosis right, I am joined by someone who spends his working life at exactly this meeting point of intelligence and systems. Dr. Dheeraj Dwarakanath is a professor of computer science and engineering at Don Bosco Institute of Technology, where he leads the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Systems, the Institute's Center of Excellence. He has been teaching for 17 years, and his research runs right across the themes of today's episode, from agentic AI, deep learning to satellite imaging and renewable energy. He has published more than 50 research papers, holds 5 Indian patents, and has written textbooks that a whole generation of students has learned from, including one of the fundamentals of machine learning and AI. In other words, he does not think about AI as a single clever model. He thinks about it as an entire system. And that is exactly the lens we need today. Dheeraj, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Gopal. And I like that you began with the iceberg because I intend to keep pulling us back under the water every time we drift up to that shiny bed on the surface.
Yeah, that is the deal. But let us begin at the shiny bit first, because I think we have to earn our way down. So let us take the popular belief seriously first, rather than making just fun out of it. When someone says that AI is all about chips, are they simply wrong or are they only half right?
They are half right, and that is the tricky kind of answer. It is true enough that people stop asking further questions. Chips are really at the center of modern AI. That part is genuinely true.
So just explain it to me as though I have never heard the word. Why did a graphic card, a thing that was built for video games, end up at the center of artificial intelligence?
Because deep down, the mathematics of drawing a video game and the mathematics of teaching on AI are the same kind of mathematics. Perhaps both involve huge numbers of very simple sums, all that happening at the same time. Think it of this way: a normal computer chip is like one brilliant professor solving one hard problem at a time. A graphics chip, which we call a GPU, is like a whole stadium full of school children, each doing one small sum at the same moment.
Yeah, and for this particular job, the stadium wins.
For this particular job, the stadium completely defeats the professor.
Oh, and teaching one of these large AI models is not a quick job, is it?
Not at all. You need thousands of these chips running without a break for weeks, sometimes months. The electricity alone is enormous. This is how chips became this rare, very expensive, and strategically important thing to own. You do not order them the way you order a phone from a website. They are closer to the national resource like oil or telecom spectrum.
And the company that makes them is now, and I still find this hard to say out loud, the most valuable company in the history of the world.
That company is Nvidia. It became the first company ever to cross $5 trillion in value, and that was around October 2025. It has been sitting at roughly 5.3 trillion since then. Here is the part that amazes me. It only crossed $1 trillion back in 2023, and it passed Microsoft to become the world's most valuable company in the middle of 2024. So, the journey from the big chip company to the largest company humans have ever built took only about 2 years.
So let me ask you honestly: is that a fair price for chips, or is the market paying for something bigger than chips?
It's paying big for something bigger. And this is the first crack in the idea that AI equals chips because NVIDIA does not really sell you a chip.
Come now, it very famously sells chips, right?
It sells you the whole stack, not just chips. Think about what is actually inside this box. Yes, there is the chip, but there is also the wiring that ties thousands of chips together so that they behave like one giant brain. There is one full machine cabinet, and the most importantly, there is a software. NVIDIA has a set of software tools, maybe you would have heard, called CUDA, that a whole
Yeah,
generation of
exactly.
engineers has learned to build on. Once everyone has learned to build on your tools, it becomes very hard for them to leave. That is the real thing protecting their business. Their unfilled orders, by the way, have been reported at more than $500 billion. You do not get numbers like that by selling something anyone can copy.
Oh, wait, let me stop on that for a moment. If the real advantage is the software and the fact that everyone is logged into their tools, then that flips the lesson for India completely.
Yeah.
Everyone keeps saying the answer is to buy more chips. But if the real value sits in the whole stack, then buying more chips might be exactly the long lesson.
Now you're thinking like Nvidia rather than like their customers. That is exactly it. The company that everyone wants to copy became rich by owning the whole stack, not just the chip. That is essentially the whole argument of this episode, and you have arrived at it almost by accident.
Yeah. Though, let me park one more idea before we go down into the stack, which is the dip down of the iceberg. So there is a shift I keep reading about. It is a shift from teaching AI models to actually using them, right? So the technical words are training, inference. So in training part, we have a lot of different data sets, right? The train, validation, and the test, and there comes the part of which is inference. So why should someone working in the government care about that difference?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, training is the one time very large effort of teaching the model in the first place. Of course, inference is what happens every single time someone actually uses that model for every question and for every answer forever. And the balance is now shifting quickly towards using. So there is one estimate from Barclays, and I want you to treat it only as an estimate that using AI could be around 70% of all the computing demand by 2026.
Oh, that's a good numbers. Okay, so and why does that matter for India in particular?
Yeah, because if the future of AI is mostly about using it, mostly about delivering it to large caterers in the country, whose real gift is reaching a billion people, may be staring at the wrong layer when it stares only at training chips. But let us hold that thought for now because you wanted to go underwater.
Yeah, I did. But before we get to the stack, we keep using this word sovereign, and I do not think it means what most people think it means.
True, there is a different idea in everybody's
Yeah.
mind.
So we say sovereign AI all the time. Is there even an agreed meaning for it? Something specific?
No, there is not, and that is not a small detail. It is the heart of the problem. Okay, so that there are four major players use that one word to mean four completely different things. And if you do not notice the difference, you'll end up copying the wrong one.
Okay. So you just mentioned about some four major players. Can you just give me a kind of elaboration on that?
Yeah, sure. Let us start with America. For the United States, being sovereign means staying ahead. It means being at the cutting edge, and it also means controlling who else is allowed to get there by controlling the chips. And the money behind that ambition is simply enormous. American private investment in AI in the year 2025 was somewhere around 286 billion dollars.
Oh, and what was arts?
Well, the American figure is around, as I mentioned, $286 billion, and ours was just around $4 billion.
Okay, nice.
So the
So,
American figure is roughly 23 times of that of China. So the plan of being so far ahead that nobody catches you is a plan that only America can really afford. Now, let's take up China. China means almost the opposite. For China, being sovereign means being in control. It does not always mean at the cutting edge. It means having a good enough system that runs completely on things that the state controls, even if that system is a little behind America's best chip.
and China arrived at that party because it was forced to. Uh,
Well, it was forced there by the chip rules,
okay.
and we will come back to that because it's a
Mhm,
good twist in the story. Now, take the third player,
mhm.
Europe.
Okay.
Europe's version of sovereignty is about rules. Europe more or less looked at the race to build the best AI, decided it was not going to win the building, and chose instead to win a rule making. Europe was the first one to write the first big law in the world, and its bet is simple. It does not matter whose AI it is. If the AI is used on an European citizen, then it must follow European rules.
That's a good approach, by the way. And the fourth player is us.
Yeah, of course. India's version is different again. So the fourth player being India, and the way they think about the meaning of sovereign is owning something useful and being able to deliver it. It means building AI models that India actually owns and controls its inside the own borders. But the point is not to plant a flag at the cutting edge. The point is to deliver that AI to more than billion people in their own languages. That is very close to what India's own model maker, Servam, was asked to do. It was asked to build in India, run in India, and serve India.
Yeah, so let me try to say all of that in a simple way, whatever the four layers which you have just talked about. And you can just stop me if I get it wrong somewhere. You talked about at first about America. So America thinks being sovereign means being ahead at the top of the list,
Yeah.
and China thinks it means being in control,
True.
right?
True.
And Europe thinks it means making the rules,
Yeah.
and India thinks it means owning something it can actually deliver to its own people.
You got it right, Gopal. Oh, that's the four different goals that we were trying to address. And here is a trap. Every one of those players will happily advise India to copy their particular plan. But copying any of them blindly would be a mistake because India is not in the situation that any of them are in.
Let me push on this gently but firmly. Is sovereign AI not just national pride dressed up in fancy language? And what is the real reason from the ground up that India should build its own AI at all instead of simply buying the best one possible or best one available and getting it on with life, right? For example, at present, if you see, a lot of people are using cloud. If you talk about India, Indian students are the ones who are using it at most.
Yeah, I do agree. But that's a fair challenge, And honestly, there's a version of sovereign AI that really is just showing off. So let me give you the version that is not. There are three good reasons. The first is that depending on others is very, very risky. Let's put it like this. Imagine that your hospital, your codes, your welfare systems, all of them end up running on an AI that you rent from a foreign company, and that for some reason company could switch off or raise the price or in fact quietly change it because of its own country's politics. That is a real danger for the nation.
And we have actually watched chip access to get switched on and off in the past few years, right? And we can just see the data also based on that.
Yeah, true. That has happened three times in space of 18 months. Okay, let me come back to the second reason that we are talking about. The second reason that the AI which already exists does not serve India well. It tends to treat the Indian languages as an afterthought. And the third reason is about your data, as you rightly mentioned. If the services for a billion people run on a foreign AI, then where does that all data go? And under whose law is that held? So, to be honest, the core of sovereignty is this: depend less on others, serve your own people properly, and keep the control of your own data. So, the dishonest version is simply to build a cutting edge model so that you can boast about having one. But the simple test is whether the thing that you built is useful or merely impressive.
Oh, that's really awesome. So useful versus impressive.
Right.
I'm going to just take this or borrow this that line, right? So you have been very patient. Let us finally go under the water. Show me the whole iceberg.
Yeah, all right. Let's do that one layer at a time. So, if AI is a stack, then let us build it from the bottom upwards. So, let us play a small game as we go. And every layer, I want you to ask me the
Okay,
same question.
that's interesting.
Is this where India is stuck or is that a deal?
It is a deal. So start at the very bottom. What sits underneath the chip?
Well, that's a very good question. So, what sits underneath the chip is electricity.
Oh, electricity.
Yeah, it's the layer that nobody ever puts on a slide. Before the chip, before the building, before the model, there is a plain electricity. And I would argue that this is the layer India should worry about the most, and yet thinks about the least.
Make the case for me. Where is electricity such a strategic input for AI in this scenario, which we have been talking about?
Let me put it across like this.
Okay.
Because these AI buildings, which we call the data centers, consume electricity on a huge scale. Around the world, data centers used about 415 terawatt hours of electricity in the year 2024. To put it in plain terms, that is roughly 1.5% of all the electricity used on the entire planet,
That's crazy.
and it's going at about 12% every year,
Oh.
which is much faster than the electricity use in general. So, the main global energy agency, the IEA, expects that figure to roughly double by 2030.
Oh, that's really surprising to know. Give me that as power that the grid has to supply rather than as total energy.
That's a good distinction. By one estimate from a firm called Gartner, which
Okay.
everybody have heard about, the power that these buildings need reaches about 132 gigawatts in the year 2026 and heading towards 290 gigawatts by 2030.
And 132 gigawatts is what in everyday terms or what?
Um, it is roughly equal to the entire electricity generating capacity of a large industrial country, and that is just one kind of a building.
Oh,
So, Gartner's own conclusion is the line worth remembering. They say that AI is now limited by how much power you can actually get. So, the real bottleneck is no longer the chip, the real bottleneck is the plug in the wall. That's electricity.
and what about India specifically?
Well, our own Ministry of Power has said that these AI data centers alone could need around 26 gigawatts of electricity by the end of year 2032. And that is on a grid which already has to serve everything else that 1.4 billion people need.
Wait, so here comes the hard question, which is you can buy 100,000 chips within a year, and India is actually aiming to do that. But can you build the power system to run them within a year?
Huh, that's a very good question and thought provoking as well. No, you cannot. You cannot download a power grid. A data center can be built in 2 or 3 years, but the power needed to run it, which means the power plants, the transmission lines, the land, it takes about 5 to 10 years to arrange. So you can easily end up with the chips sitting there, as you mentioned earlier, switched off, waiting for electricity. They become very expensive machines doing nothing at all.
Oh, so let me ask this related game question which we are doing. Is this where India is stuck? Is it just the electricity or what?
Well, it's one of the 2 or 3 places where India is stuck completely. But let us keep going. Take me to the next layer.
Oh, okay. So let us go one level up to the buildings themselves and to the cooling and the wiring. So there has been a large private build out here from companies such as Yota, Control S, and then Reliance, and also Google. They are putting $15 billion into a hub in Visakhapatnam. So is this a solved problem or a problem that is coming in future?
Um, it's moving quickly, but it carries a hidden cost that leads straight back to electricity. Everyone talks about the chips, but nobody talks about the cooling. Inside one of these buildings, the computers themselves use about 60% of the power. But the cooling, which simply means stopping everything from overheating, can range from about 7% in a very efficient building to more than 30% in a poor one. In other words, you can burn a third of your electricity just keeping the machines cool.
And that connects to the water worry that people in Gujarat keep raising about the chip factories. Is that concern overblown or is it real or it is being kind of hyped?
No, definitely it's not hyped. And what the concerns are raised by this Gujarat people are definitely real. Both data centers and chip factories need a great deal of water. Newer cooling methods can cut the direct water use sharply by 70 to 90%, but they do not cut the electricity. And generating the electricity also uses water back at the power plant. So the question of where the water and the power shall come from is not just people complaining about that in the neighborhood, it's the genuine first order problem.
Oh, let us keep climbing. The next layer is making the chip itself. So we have the semiconductor mission, which I also talked earlier. So we have ISM 2.0, and we have factories being opened by Prime Minister. And are we about to make our own chips? Is this the idea or what?
Hmm, okay, let me be very careful here because this is the point where your excitement turns to run ahead of facts. What's happening is genuinely real. The semiconductor mission began in December 2021 with about a fund of 76,000 crore. The next
Oh.
phase, which you called now, which you rightly mentioned as ISM 2.0, was approved in 2026 and it is much larger and over 1,27,000 crores. So Micron's chip packaging plant in Sanand was opened in February 2026. Akane's plant followed in March and the flagship project is Tata plant in Dhalera.
Oh, that's good insight. So we are making chips, right?
We are, but starting to, not yet, but we are starting to. But here is the detail that matters. So the one which I mentioned rightly now, the Tata plant in Dolera, is aimed at older, simpler chips, and its first output is expected to be out in late
Oh,
2026.
this year only, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
late 2026.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those simpler chips are genuinely useful.
Mm-hmm.
They are the chips in your car, in your washing machine, in your factory equipment, in the display screens, and whatnot. But they're not the most advanced chips, the ones that are used to train the large AI models. Those most advanced chips are still made by only a handful companies abroad, mainly the Taiwan's TSMC, along with Samsung and Intel.
So the honest version is that the semiconductor mission is very good industrial policy, but it does not directly solve India's AI chip problem. Am I going right?
Yeah, let me be honest.
Okay.
That's the honest version that you spoke about right now. It brings jobs, factories, less dependence on others, and all of that is real. But if someone tells you that the semiconductor mission means India soon will make its own AI training chips, then they are describing a completely different and a much harder job, and one that is still far away. They are simply two very different things wearing the same word chip.
Okay, so that means it's kind of hyped only, not in a range of what we are expecting as of now.
Yeah.
So let us climb again. So above the hardware, we reach data and then the models. India has just produced its first homegrown large AI models. How big a deal is Sarvam in your perspective? What do you think about it?
Okay. Honestly, it is just genuinely a milestone. Servam was chosen under the India AI mission in the year April 2025 out of 67 companies that applied to build India's own model. It was given the use of around 4,000 of NVIDIA's top chips, along with a subsidy of about 99 crore. And it is reported that the government took a small ownership share in return. Then, in February 2026, at the Delhi summit, Servam released two models for free, one a smaller and one a larger. They were described as India's first AI models built from scratch in India on Indian machines.
I can hear a but arriving.
Ah, yeah, that's yeah, it's a gentle one. That is probably the real achievement, and do not want to shrink it. But we should be honest that these models are still behind the world's best, both in size and on independent testing. And I would actually steer away from the flashier claims that are going around, the ones that say it beats this or that famous model. Many of those details change from one source to the next, and they have not been independently checked. The fair way to describe it is as a serious and a solid first version. And here is a twist for you, Gopal. For what India actually needs the model to do, being behind the world's best may hardly matter at all.
That is surprising. Can you just unpack that for me? It's
Yeah,
really amazing to just know.
yeah, sure, sure. Let me do that for you. Think about a voice assistant that keeps or that probably helps a farmer in rural Karnataka check a government scheme in Kannada. Now,
Okay.
does that assistant need to beat the world's smartest model at an university level physics?
No, I think.
No, it does not.
Okay.
It needs to be more reliable. It
Yeah.
needs to be cheap and it needs to be good at Kannada. And that quietly rewrites the whole ambition, which brings us near the top of the stack to adjusting these models and to building applications.
Oh, okay. So from the Indian perspective, we see that's something which we are talking about the custom models, right? For a particular problem, to solve that particular problem. So, for example, in India, there have been few of the small models which have been running, which solve a particular problem, which is at a very small scale, right? And you have been hinting throughout this episode that this is where India's real strength lies. Why is that?
Okay. So, because of one very pleasant fact,
Okay.
adjusting an existing model is far cheaper than building a new one from scratch,
Yeah,
which everybody
exactly.
agrees for.
Exactly.
So, if good, then free to download models already exist, then they do, such as Llama,
Yeah.
Mistral, and now Servum. Then you do not need to spend hundreds of millions building from scratch or zero. You take the free model, you adjust it cheaply using the Indian legal text or medical records or a single local language. The cost of entering that layer is very, very low and it sits right next to India's real superpower, which is delivering software to billions of people.
Oh, so the layers where India is stuck are the ones at the bottom,
Yeah, yeah.
which are as you told
Electricity.
about electricity,
Yeah,
chip making,
yeah.
and the most advanced models. And the layers where India might be strongest are the ones at the top, which are adjusting models, building applications, and delivering them to the people.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. That's the whole map in single sentence.
Okay.
And that is exactly why just buy more chips is the wrong answer.
Oh, that's the final thing. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
it
nice.
throws money at a layer that is neither India's real problem nor the India's real strength.
Okay, so let us do one more kind of honest check. Then, not the press release version, but the real one. Start with the strengths and what does India genuinely have?
Uh, well, first, yeah, I must admit, first, India has talent, and
Yeah, that's for sure.
that at a world class scale. So I mean that seriously. Accordingly to the Stanford's figures in 2025, India was second in the world for the top AI researchers and inventors with around 50,000 of them. That places India behind only the superpower that is United States and ahead of Germany. And on LinkedIn, measure of how widely AI skills have spread through the workforce, India ranks first in the world. Indian students particularly use these tools more than any American students do. So, on a raw brain power, India is not behind, it's actually near to the very top.
Yeah, so here, whatever you talked about, the point which you said about the talent, and I completely agree with that. And also, I have an idea here. I have a point saying that if you see this, the concept of institutional lagging, right, in India, that is the main factor for this technological disruption, which is leading youngsters who are studying, who are completing their graduation or something, and after that they are going to the outside countries because they are
Yeah.
not getting that opportunities here.
True.
Okay, let us just go to the second strength.
Well, the second strength is the India's shared public digital systems, which are the digital rails that the whole country runs on it.
Okay.
So that deserves its own section, and it will get one shortly. So let me also put out the third strength is to sheer take up. India is one of the fastest adapting AI markets anywhere in the world.
All right. Now, for the part that hurts, what are the weaknesses? Because till now we have been speaking about strengths. So let me just put it here. That what are the weaknesses?
Okay, the weakness I keep returning to is how little India spends on research. India
Yeah.
spends about 0.64% of its economy on R&D, whereas China spends around 2.5%. And to compare with United States, it spends about 3.5%, and South Korea spends about 5%.
Oh.
And this is not a small gap. It means we simply do not put enough money into the very thing that produces breakthrough.
So here is the puzzle I can't get past. If India produces the world's second largest pool of top AI talent, which you just talked earlier,
Yeah.
then why is that not turning into one leading AI that is built inside AI? Is that the reason because of the investment in the R&D, or is this something else?
Um, That's a good question. But however, because we produce the talent and then we send it abroad, and that is the most uncomfortable weakness of them. So that's there.
Okay. So this is the one that genuinely worries me the most. India has world class talent, and at the same time, it has the largest loss of AI researchers of any country. So I want to get this right. How can both of these things be true at once?
Let me explain this to you with
Okay.
the example of a coin.
Yeah,
So any coin has two sides.
of
So
course.
which means Stanford found that India's net loss of AI researchers in 2025 was the largest of any country in their data. Now more researchers left India than left any other nation, and the figure was more than the double that of the next country on the list. So it's almost a mirror image of what the United States gains. So India is not failing to grow talent, India is failing to retain it.
So why do they leave? And please be specific, because saying better opportunities is too vague to guide any policy.
That's fair, but there are three concrete reasons that you need
Okay.
to look at. The first is obviously the prime one, money. The funding needed to start a company or a lab is far easier to find abroad. The second is about machines. A researcher who wants to build something ambitious can get far more computing power elsewhere. And the third is the crowd around you, meaning the destiny of other experts, mentors, and top labs all gathered in one place. So, a brilliant researcher in India has to choose between doing cutting edge work here and doing it there abroad. And right now, there, that is abroad, wins on all these three counts.
Okay, so let me just challenge this obvious solution. Can money alone fix this? And the India AI mission is worth over 10,000 crore. If money were the answer, would it not have fixed the problem already?
No, money alone cannot fix it. And that is an important thing that you need to admit, and I need to admit, and people need to admit. So you can certainly subside computing power, and the mission does exactly that. It has brought the cost down to about 115 to 150 rupees per hour, which is well below the market rate. That genuinely helps. But you cannot buy a crowd of brilliant colleagues, or the freedom to do bold research, or the feeling that most exciting work is happening in the room next door. Keeping people is a slower problem, and it is far more about the culture than about the line in a budget.
Oh, let me put the SAR version to you. What if the single biggest threat to India's AI ambition is not China and is not the chip rules, but is instead a visa office in, for example, San Francisco? Is that overstated?
It's only a little overstated.
Okay.
It's pointing at the truth. The chips you can eventually buy or build, but the person who would have built India's best lab and who instead built someone else is not someone you get back easily.
And that lands us exactly where I wanted to be. If the chips were never really the main problem, then the real question is not how India wins the chip race. The real question is whether India should even be running that race at all.
Okay, copy America or do it on India's own way.
Oh. So here is the fork in the road. So should India try to copy America with cutting edge labs, giant computing power, and an attempt to outspend everyone, or should India play a completely different game? And I want you to just make the case for copying America as strongly as you can first, and then tell me why it fails.
All right. So the strongest case is this. The cutting edge is where the power sits. Whoever builds the best AI sets the standards, keeps the profits, and turns everyone else into their customer or something worse. By that logic, India must fight for the cutting edge or else accept depending on others forever. This is the serious version of the argument, and it is not a foolish one.
And I also asked that why does it fail?
It fails simply on arithmetic. There were $286 billion dollars of private AI money in America last year. There were about $4 billion dollars here. You do not close a gap like that with willpower and a good summit. If India tries to fight the money war on Americans' term, then India loses definitely and loses expensively while ignoring the things it could actually win. Copying the cutting edge plan is how India could spend a fortune only to come third in a two-horse race.
So what is the Indian game? And I'm going to test this one hard because this is where a lot of conference stage talk lives. So here is the kind of, you can say, blunt version. Does UPI actually help India build better AI, or does it just sound good on a stage?
That's exactly the right question, and I want to answer it honestly in two halves because the honest answer really does have two sides.
Yes, obviously. Give me those two halves. Just go on.
Here is the hopeful half. India has built something that no other democracy has at this scale. It has built shared public digital systems that everyone can use. There is an Aadhaar for identity, there is an UPI for payments, and further systems for shopping, health records, sharing data with consent, and etc. And at the scale is genuinely hard to believe. UPI handled over 23 billion payments in a single month in the middle of 2026. Across the whole year, it moved around 300 lakh crore in value. It now makes up roughly 85% of all of the India's everyday digital payments. So India has these rails reaching a billion people. It has proven that it can build a public digital service for the whole country. That same recipe could be used for AI. You could have shared public computing power, shared public data, and AI offered as a public service in the way that a road or a railway is a public
Yeah,
service.
that is a hopeful half. Now argue against your own hope. Give me the doubtful half.
Hmm. And thus, this half matters just as much. UPI data is only a payment data. It's simply a record that this account paid account 50 rupees. But it's not the rich written material that you need in order to teach a language model. And quite rightly, India's data protection law keeps the personal data locked. So we have to be careful here. These rails do not automatically give you a smarter model. What they give you is the reach, which is ability to deliver AI to billion people and to build services on top of it. So the honest claim is not the UPI makes India's AI smarter. The honest claim is that these rails make India the best place on earth to deliver AI to everyone. So these are the two different advantages, and mixing them up is exactly how the conference stage talk goes wrong.
Yeah, that is a far more useful claim than the one people usually make. It is a strength in delivering AI rather than a strength in building a smarter model.
Precisely. And remember what we said right at the beginning, the world is shifting towards using AI and delivering it to people. So, a strength and delivery in a world that is mostly about delivery might be worth a great deal more than first sounds.
Okay, let me bring in the favorite phrase, which is the frugal innovation. It is called jugaad, turn into a national strategy. Is that a real path, or is it just a comforting story we tell ourselves because we can't afford the expensive one?
Jugaad is a nice one. Okay, it's a bit of both, and I will defend the real part of it. There is a genuine and a proven idea here. In China, a company, maybe you would have heard of this,
Yeah, obviously.
DeepSeek,
Yeah,
got
yeah.
an enormous amount out of a clever software. It squeezed near top performance out of weaker chips precisely because it could not get the best ones. In other words, the limit forced the cleverness.
So the limit becomes the strength.
Sometimes it do. And
Okay.
if there is one country whose entire engineering culture is built on doing more with less, it is the one. So frugal is not merely an excuse. When you are forced to build AI that is cheap, efficient, and easy to deliver, you may end up making exactly what most of the world needs and can afford. And I do not mean only India. I mean poorer countries everywhere. That is the market of billions of people that the big labs are mostly ignoring.
So the last piece is languages. India has 22 official languages and a billion people who do not mainly live their lives in English. Why have the big labs largely ignored this? And is it a genuine opening?
Hmm. They have ignored it because there is less money in it and because it's harder. Many Indian languages have very little text online to learn from, but that very difficulty is a wall that protects you. If you solve AI for Indian languages, then you have solved something that the big labs have not solved for a market that cannot easily reach. And the stakes here are deeply human. This is about whether a person who is more comfortable speaking than typing can get services and the information in his own language simply by talking. That is not a small niche. That is most of the country.
But how do you even build AI for a language that has almost no text online? Because obviously, when we are building those AI tools, we are doing the training everything from the web, and if that particular thing is not there on the web on online, then how are we going to build the AI and the tools for that?
Well, you do it carefully. You create computer made practice text to fill the gaps. But
Okay.
I must add a warning to you. If you do this carelessly, that made up text repeats its own mistakes and its own bias. So, it is not a free solution. You also build smart tools for reading Indian scripts. It's a hard work, but hard and mostly ignored by people with the most money is the very definition of an opportunity.
Okay, so one worry before we move on, if the government builds AI rails and also holds everyone's data, then where is the line before a public good quietly turns into surveillance?
That is the essential safety question, and I will not wave it away. The same rails that deliver welfare quickly can, without the real data protection and honest, independent watchdogs, then that become a tool for watching citizens. So the technology itself is neutral. The rules around it are not. So if India goes down this public AI route, and I believe it should, then the data protection and the oversight have to be real and not merely for show. Otherwise, you have built something very powerful and pointed it at your own people.
Let us zoom out to the whole board. There is the chip flight between United States and China. Bluntly, how much of India's AI future is being decided in rooms that India is not even in?
More of it than we would like. The clearest example is a set of rules about who is allowed to buy the best chips. And I want to get this exactly right because it has changed three times in about 18 months.
Okay, walk me through it because people are still repeating the older versions.
Okay. So in January 25, the previous American government made a rule that sorted the whole world into three groups based on how much chip access each group would get. India was placed in the mid, which meant with some limits. That annoyed a great many people. Even Microsoft argued publicly that India should be moved up, and it warned that otherwise countries like India might simply turn to China instead.
And plenty of people still say that India is in the middle group.
And now that is now wrong, which is worth setting straight on the record. That entire rule was cancelled in May 2025 before it ever actually came into force. So there is no group system in place right now. Access is now worked out country by country and deal by deal. That sounds friendlier, but it is actually less predictable. And not being able to predict things is its own kind of risk when you are trying to plan 10 years ahead.
Let me ask about rare earths because I think it is the most overstated idea in this whole area. Is India's AI held hostage by China's grip on rare earths? And please be precise. Is that or is there actually a rare earth chip inside my GPU?
I'm glad you're doubtful about this because the loose version really does mislead people. Here, let me be very precise and give a precise version to you. The actual thinking part of your chip is made of silicon, it is not made of rare earths. So, the claim that there are rare earths inside your chip is basically wrong.
Oh, so where is the real weak spot in this?
Okay, so it's around the edges and further up the supply chain. It is a special kind of a chip made with a material called gallium, which is used in power and radio parts. It is in the polishing pastes and chemicals used to make the chips. It is in the magnets and the lenses inside the machines. China has indeed tightened its grip on materials like gallium, so the risk is real, but it lives in the supply chain around the chip, in the materials, in the tools, and the packaging, and not inside the thinking part of the chip itself. So, if you overstate the risk, you will end up protecting the wrong thing.
There is an irony in this whole story that I want you to name. The chip rules were meant to slow China down.
Yeah, it can be argued that they sped up China's self reliance instead, cut off from the best American chips. China leaned into its own good enough system using Huawei's chips and DeepSeek's clever software. By some estimates, a Huawei chip does about 60% of the job of the top NVIDIA chip when it comes to using AI. That is not the cutting edge, but it is good enough to run the real services under the state's control. And the stated goal from China's leaders is to be more than 70% self reliant chips by 2028. And I would stress that this is their target and not a guarantee. So the lesson for India is very clear. A determined country placed under pressure will build its own system. Pressure creates capability.
Okay. So, where does India realistically stand in all of this? Is it a major power in a multi power AI world or is it something else?
It's not a major power, at least not in this decade, because it does not have the computing, the money, or the chip factories for that. India is a better understood as a swing state, which is the country that everyone tries to win over. It does depend on American chips, but it also is wanted by everyone for its market, for its talent,
Yeah.
and for being a democratic option between America and China. India joined a supply chain group led by United States at the Delhi summit, and a country that everyone wants on their side has real bargaining power as long as it is honest about being that kind of a country and does not bankrupt itself pretending to be a superpower.
That is a genuinely different way to think about it from the one you usually hear. Right?
Yeah, that is because the usual way is borrowed from the great powers. India needs a way of its own.
Let us just talk about money because a plan without a budget is just a press release. How much would India or how much would a serious homegrown AI system actually cost? And can India even afford the race it is being told to run?
We have already said that the number matters most. It was $286 billion dollars in America against about $4 billion here in private money last year. So, if you ask whether India can outspend its way to the cutting edge, my answer is no. It's not even
Okay.
close.
So if India cannot outspend, then what does spending well look like?
It looks like being clever rather than simply spending more. Every rupee has to buy as much as it possibly can. That means building on free, ready made models instead of paying to build from scratch. It means sharing your computing power as a national resource, which the mission has already done, instead of everyone buying their own. It measures using the digital rails you already own to deliver the AI. And it means spending the scarce money on two things that money can actually fix, which are keeping your talent and doing
Practical.
practical research
Yeah.
rather than on the expensive projects.
Mhm.
India's edge has to be that it's clever with money because it will never have money in abundance.
Yeah, rightly said that keeping your talent and doing practical research because that's something which I think that it exists just to impress, right? And who should pay for all of this? The central government, the states, or the private companies, or the universities?
All of them. and
Yeah, that's
and
right.
and interestingly, it's already happening on several tracks at the same time. The central government pays for the shared basics and for the mission. The states are competing with one another. Like, for example, Tamil Nadu and Odisha have both signed deals with model makers. Private companies are putting in real money. Google is investing $15 billion in Vishakhapatnam,
Yeah, which
and there are tons of billions more coming from Microsoft, Amazon, Reliance, and our own TCS. There is also a special deep tech fund, so the money is arriving from many directions at once.
whatever the opportunities which you talked about, is that a strength or a risk? This business of money coming from many directions.
It's both.
Okay.
It's safer because you're not betting everything on a single source, but it can be split into dozen half-sized efforts that never quite add up to anything large. The real job of policy here is to join them all up, and so that the central government's computing, the state's offers, and the company's plans all point in the same direction.
Okay, so let me just ask one question before we just close this part. When a government owns a share of model company, as it reportedly does with Sarvam, is that smart industrial policy or is it a clash of rules or roles waiting to happen?
Uh, it can be either, and it depends entirely on the rules built around it. Let me put it in this version to you. The public put in the computing power in the subsidy, so the public should share in the reward, and the model stays under Indian control. Here is the worrying version. The government is now the rule maker, the customer, and the part owner of the same company all at once. and those three roles can easily pull in different directions. It works if the walls between those roles are genuine. It becomes a problem if they're not. So, my honest answer is that we should watch it closely, and this is not the final verdict.
Okay, so take me 10 years into the future. For example, it is 2025 or 26. In the good version of that future, what does India's AI look like? And just as importantly, which parts did India deliberately choose not to build?
In a good version of 2035-36, India did not try to build everything, and that is precisely why it succeeded. India chose not to fight for most advanced chip factory. It chose not to burn billions chasing a cutting edge model simply to plant a flag. Instead, it owns a thriving delivery layer. There are thousands of applications built on free and Indian models in every language, reaching villages through the public rails. India solved the electricity problem that is only beginning to worry about today. It kept more of its talent because staying finally became worthwhile, and it became the clear AI capital for the most of the world, offering the cheap, many language, easy to use system that 3 or 4 billion people actually rely on. India did not win the cutting edge race, it won even bigger one.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And what about the bad version? Because as of now, we have just talked about the good version of our future aspects. So, what are the bad version aspects, and what does failure look like, and what is the mistake that causes it?
Um, the bad version is on where the India believed the headlines. It poured its limited money into show-off projects. It
Okay.
came a distant third, and it let the boring basics fall apart. So the great could not power the buildings, and the talent kept living because nothing had changed. India fell in love with the shiny tip of an iceberg and let everything beneath the water rot away. If I had to name the single mistake, it would be this: India mistook the most visible part for the most important part.
Okay, so that is the whole episode. All right, here's the question I promised I would ask sharply. If you could give India's decision makers just three pieces of advice from your end, the three that matter more than everything else, what would they be? Just put out your thoughts.
Yeah, measure them. I want to put out exactly my three advices. The first one is this: fix the basics before you chase the cutting edge. Electricity, the grid, and the power for the buildings are the real ceiling. Sort out the plug before you buy more chips, or the chips will remain simply idle. The second advice is this: keep your people. Talent is your greatest asset and your greatest leak at the same time. Spend on giving people reasons to stay and not only on the hardware. And my final and the third advice is this: play your own game. Own the delivery layer. Go all in all on many languages and on doing more with less. Build AI as a public service in the same way that you build the UPI payment
Payments.
service,
Yeah.
and not stop measuring yourself against the race that you were never set to win.
Yeah, so give me a kind of hopeful ending now. And I do not mean the blind hope, I mean the kind. What is the genuine reason to believe that India can do this in its own way?
The earned reason that you demand is that India has already done it once. Everyone said that India could not build world class digital systems, and then a billion people were making payments on the public rails that far richer countries now travel here to study. The real lesson of UPI was never about payments. The real lesson is that India is at its best when it stops copying, and India instead builds public systems for scale for everyone in its own way. If India uses the same recipe for AI, being clever instead of spending big, delivering to the people instead of planting flags and treating its own billion person problems as a design brief, then India does not need to win somebody else's race. India can build the very thing that everyone else ends up waiting to copy. That is not blind hope, that is a track record.
Yeah. So stop copying and build for everyone in your way, right? I think that is where we should now end.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Dheeraj Dwarakanath, thank you so much for just coming here and just having a discussion on this topic. And this has been exactly the conversation which we hoped it would be.
Thank you, Gopal, and to everyone listening. The next time you see a headline with a giant chip number in it, do what we did today. Look underwater.
Yeah. And to everyone listening, thank you for spending your time with us. If you found this episode useful, learned something new, or simply came away with a few more questions about India's AI future, do share this episode and subscribe to all things policy. Subscribe to our channel. We have a lot more interesting conversations coming your way. So stay curious, stay engaged, and more is importantly, stay hyped. Until next time, this is Gopal Tomar, and you have been listening to All Things Policy, a Takshila Institution production. Thank you.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.